Everybody. I am going to introduce two people who are the other cogs to the wheel from UNC. Michael Akridge is the one that really manages our current iLab platform, and Ben Wright is my right hand. And the two of us are the bigwigs that have to go around and talk to everyone. Ben's going to give you a little bit more on the why this is even happening, but for those of you that have been around long enough and you've heard me, I have had many a complaint about iLab, and so this was sort of the perfect time for me to try to pivot if I could. And they won the battle. So I will let them introduce themselves a little bit more and give you kind of the synopsis of what happened and why we did this.
All right, thanks, Megan. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And let's see how this works. All right, everybody see my presentation? Thumbs up for Megan. All right, nice. All right, cool. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Andrew, for putting us on the docket today for this. Thanks to ABRF for letting us speak on this. So we really do appreciate it. My name is Ben Wright. I'm the Director of Research Core Development at UNC in our Office of Sponsored Programs, and joined by Megan. Everyone knows Megan. Michael Akridge, who is our Research Core Development Financial Analyst. And as Megan said, Michael is our resident iLab expert. So if we get any technical questions or have to go into any technical details, I will turn it over to him as not to embarrass myself. So we've been using iLab for, well, I'm sorry, Michael and I and Megan have been involved in iLab for about 4 years here at UNC. But as I'll explain here in a little bit, UNC has been utilizing iLab for since 2016. So here's our contact information. If anybody has any questions or would like to discuss anything outside of this meeting, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I'm sure we'll share these slides, and the contact slide is in the beginning and at the end as well. So we're an open book when it comes to this. Please feel free to reach out to us if anybody wants more information or would like to chat. Also, I'm probably, I have a formal presentation scheduled here to go over. Hopefully, it'll take about 20 to 25 minutes or so. I'm going to try to zip through it pretty quickly because I want to save time for kind of an open dialogue at the end of this. I think the more people we can have speaking today, the better, because I'm sure a lot of you in the audience have gone through a similar situation as this or have at least worked with one of these systems either currently or in the past. And I think that's the purpose of this meetings, right? Is to engage with the brain trust and get everyone's thoughts and ideas. So I don't think I can see the chat, so we'll probably save questions until the end. But yeah, hoping we can have a dialogue and a discussion at the end of this to get everybody's input and everybody's thoughts. So, gonna go over.
Ben, real quick,
Oh, sorry.
I am looking at the chat, so if anyone has questions while he's presenting and you don't want to forget it, I'll be monitoring the chat.
Beautiful. Thank you. Michael gave a thumbs up too, so I think we'll be covered there. So as Megan mentioned, we're going to kind of go over a case study today, some things that we've been going through over the past couple months in hopes to share our experience, share information with you guys on core facility management platforms, right? And what we've learned over our journey of the past couple months. And I'm gonna get into that right now. So as of fall of 2025, we had 65 cores here at UNC that utilized iLab, and we had another 45 or so cores that utilized Infoport cores. And this was a homegrown core management system that was administered by UNC ITS, our Information Technology Systems, which was our central office IT here at the university. And we really didn't have much to do with Infoport cores, admittedly. It was run by ITS. It's a pretty simple system. Not a lot of functionality, not a lot of bells and whistles in it. But in September of 2025, ITS came to us and said, "Hey, we're going to be decommissioning Infoport cores actually at the end of calendar year 2025." So I hope the audience will find this as humorous as we did. They said, "We're going to be just decommissioning Infoport cores. You guys have about 3 months to transition 45 cores over to iLab." And we're like, "Okay, no problem. That sounds good." Right? Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and we were able to convince them to keep Infoport alive for another year. So the Infoport cores module will be decommissioned at the end of calendar year 2026, which gave us about a 1 year runway to find a new home for those 45 cores, right? And that's one of the I'll get into the considerations here in a minute, but that's another consideration that we were up against is we had a pretty firm deadline for our decision to be made and for us to deploy a new solution for those 45 cores. So just keep that in the back of everyone's mind as well. So our potential options moving forward for those Infoport cores, we could move the Infoport cores into iLab, which would almost double the number of UNC cores that utilized iLab. We can invest in a new management system for all of our UNC cores. We did know that we didn't want to continue the two system, the two platform system, right? We wanted to get all of our cores onto one system. We could take over Infoport and administer it ourselves, right? But then we're still left with two platforms. One's a homegrown system, and frankly, we didn't have the technical expertise or the bandwidth to do that. Option number four, we could give up and go home. This sounded like an amazing option to me, honestly, but I pondered my future employment status if I were to follow that option and decided it probably wasn't the best. So we chose to perform an analysis to decide between option number one and option two, right? Should we double down and move all of our cores over to iLab, or should we move to a new core management system altogether? And that's kind of the question here that we will go over today. So just a disclaimer, as I said before, we've utilized iLab since 2016. We're not trying to push any one of these platforms on to you guys in the audience today. This is not intended to be a promotional or marketing presentation. We're just going to present to you guys the facts and present our experience to you guys, and hopefully that will help fill in some of the information for you all that may be in a similar spot. We do encourage you to contact these vendors and get more information and schedule demos yourselves. We did have a pleasant experience with them, right? Specifically, Stratacore and Nucor. We engaged with both of them. We had multiple demos with both of them. We spoke to other institutions that utilized these systems, and overall, it was a great experience, right? No one was overly aggressive. We didn't receive a bunch of promotional or marketing emails or anything like that. All in all, it was a pleasant experience. So if you're in a similar situation or you're looking to possibly transition and change your platforms, we encourage you to reach out to these vendors and do your own research. We're not receiving any kickbacks from iLab, not that I'm aware of, at least. If iLab wants to meet me in a dark alley with a briefcase full of money, that's great. Let me know where to be. But until then, I will be here. And the information that we present today is based on demos and information that we got during Q4 of calendar year 2025. So just keep in mind that this may not be 100% accurate or 100% comprehensive. This is just what we got from the information and what we understood from the demos. So the big three players in this space that we were looking at is obviously iLab, whose vendor is Agilent, PPMS, whose vendor is Stratacore, and we'll call them Stratacore today, and then Nucor, which is an open source software solution from Northwestern University. So we reached out to Stratacore and Nucor for demos and meetings to gain more information. The next couple of slides just highlights some features of iLab, Stratacore, and Nucor, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of the features of each one of these systems, but they're here if anybody is interested. I'm sure we'll disseminate this PowerPoint presentation. You'll have them here. I'm going to highlight some of these features on the next couple of slides when we do a comparison of these. So I'm not going to go into the specifics now, but just to put them out here for you guys that are interested. I will say in our experience at least, iLab and Stratacore were pretty similar. We didn't we didn't view one as exponentially different from the other. There were pros and cons of each platform. There were some things that iLab did well that Stratacore did not do as well, and there were some things that Stratacore did well that iLab may not have done as well. We didn't really see a huge gap between those two systems. And I know we've had presentations about iLab and Stratacore in this group before, so I encourage you to check those out and get more opinions on that as well. But we didn't really um, see that many differentiating factors between the two. Nucor, however, is I say this with affection and compassion. It's kind of out in left field, right? It is a different model and a different solution. And being that it is open source software, so you can go on the internet this afternoon and download the code for Nucor. As such, it's the least expensive platform. It's technically free, right? Nothing is free in the world, but technically the code is open source and you can go out there and get it for free. Now, you have to pay, whether that's uh, internally to develop the code and make it work for you and deploy it at your institution, or you can utilize a third-party developer as well. Several of the institutions that use Nucor use the same third-party developer, and we heard nothing but good things about that third-party developer. However, you don't have to use that third-party developer. You can use another third-party developer, or you don't have to use a third party at all. You can manage it completely in-house if you have the IT infrastructure and expertise to do so. So just wanted to shout that out. Being that it's open source, it's really fully customizable, right? You own it as an institution. I guess nobody really owns the open source, but you own the deployment of that as an institution, and it is fully customizable. You can do with it whatever you want. If you want to tear down the code and build it back new, you can, right? You can add whatever features you want. Um, Obviously with a limiting factor being time, expertise, and potential money that you would need to pay a developer to do that. So that was very enticing and appealing to us, certainly, and I'll touch on that here in just a moment. So in terms of a comparison of the three platforms, we set forth some criteria on what was important to us. This is kind of in no particular order, but what was important to us, and then kind of ranked each one being the best, three being not the best. We don't want to say the worst, but not the best. And this is kind of how we rank them here on this slide. Again, this is through the lens of UNC, right? So I'll reiterate this a couple times. We are viewing these things through the lens of UNC, which we have over 100 cores across 6 or 7 different schools that are very decentrally managed, right? We have a pretty unique case. So I encourage you guys to view this and view these platforms through the lens of your institutions, right? If you have 15 or 20 cores that you need to manage, your needs may be very different than ours, where we have to manage 100 plus cores in this system. So just keep that in mind throughout this entire presentation. In terms of customization, the first choice was Nucor. And again, this is something that was very appealing to us. Nucor is open source software. It is ours. We can do with it what we want, right? And then that goes for anyone else as well. And that was very appealing to us because we do come across things pretty frequently where we're like, wish we could change this, wish we could do this. And with Nucor, kind of the sky is the limit in terms of what you want to do. Choice number 2 was Stratacore. Choice number 3 was iLab. I think we've talked about it a lot in these meetings about the iLab feature request list and what they do with that feature request list. We don't really have a lot of lived experience with Stratacore, right? But based on our conversations with the Stratacore rep, Stratacore operates in the same manner, right? Where they have a feature request list and they look at it from all of the institutions that utilize Stratacore and then prioritize features and things like that. Um, Again, we don't have any hard information. We haven't utilized Stratacore in that way, so we don't know, but we have been pretty unhappy with iLab's feature requests and the features that we would like to see either created or improved in the system. In terms of cost, Nucor, again, is choice number 1 here, being that it's open source. Even with the development time, we estimated that it was the least expensive of these three platforms, even if we're paying a third-party developer to do a lot of the back end work. We did estimate that it would be the least expensive option. I don't want to talk specifics in price or get into any figures like that, but we did determine also that StrataCore would be slightly less expensive than iLab. But just like in the capabilities of the two system, there wasn't a Grand Canyon-esque difference between the two. Next is support. So we broke down support into three categories. Development support being not only the creation and deployment of the institutional site, right, but also ongoing development support like a feature requests and things like that. Again, new core was first here because it's fully customizable. There are no rules if when it comes to what you want to do. Um, we put StrataCore and iLab both at choice number three again because we're not terribly happy with iLab in terms of the feature requests, and we haven't really lived through StrataCore, so we don't really have we can't really say one way or another which is better, StrataCore or iLab. I will say for new core, there are a couple different options. There are a couple, I want to say four or five or six, a handful of institutions that have formed a consortium, a new core consortium, and you can join that consortium if you want, if you move to new core, or if you utilize new core, or you don't have to, right? If you do utilize the consortium, then you pay into that consortium and feature requests are prioritized by the consortium, but they're also the cost of those feature requests are allocated out to those institutions, right? So if you have an expensive feature request, if you're out on your own, then you have to pay that entire cost. If you're part of the consortium, then that gets spread across a handful of institutions as well. So just a little bit of nuance there for new core. In terms of onboarding support, this was support in onboarding cores into the platform. And we've really been pretty happy with iLab's onboarding support. I will give them kudos here. They have a 6-week onboarding process in which each core facility is assigned um, an onboarding manager, and the onboarding manager works hand in hand with the core facility to create the site, to train the core facility on how to use the site. And iLab really has it down to a science. It's a very streamlined process, and we've found that process to be very successful at our cores, not only in creating the site in a way that it needs to be created, but also training the core staff as well. StrataCore had a slightly less hands-on approach to this. Again, we haven't lived this, but based on our conversations with StrataCore, there's kind of two primary pieces to this. StrataCore offers training in groups of cores. I believe it's like a 2-hour training, very kind of high-level general training to cores directly. And then StrataCore also trains institutional admins to perform the onboarding and perform the training to the cores at the institution. So it's not as robust of an onboarding process as iLab. Nucor just doesn't really have an onboarding process, right? It's up to the institution, not because the Nucor model is broken or it doesn't work effectively. It's just a different model, right? There's not onboarding support offered within that model. In terms of administrative support, this is kind of the day-to-day operational support. So if a particular customer is having trouble or a core facility is having trouble with a particular issue, or maybe an external customer is having trouble and we don't have access to get to that external customer's site or something like that. We've been very pleased with iLab support as well, just on a daily basis. I know in the past couple weeks, a month or so, they've been tweaking their help function, and there's been some challenges with that. But overall, they're very quick to respond. They're very helpful. They respond sometimes in just a few minutes, and we've been very pleased with that. Um, we've been told that StrataCore has the same level of 24/7 support that's provided. I don't know. I cannot confirm or deny that, right? Because we've never worked with that. And again, new core, the administrative support would come from the institution. In terms of overall support, which is just kind of a conglomeration of the three specific types of support, we felt that iLab was the leader there, with StrataCore coming in second. And again, Nucor, it's not Nucor's model to provide all of that support. So it's not not a problem with Nucor specifically. It's just not their model to provide that support. In terms of reporting, we ranked Nucor as number one because you can do whatever you want, right? If you want it, build it, and then you have it. Stratacore, we kind of had a question mark here because we didn't get to interact with the Stratacore reporting feature. However, we were told that you can't create reports in Stratacore. So there are a list of pre-made reports that you can choose from, but you don't have the ability to customize reporting based on data elements and things like that. I'm sure that there have been a lot of reports made throughout history in Stratacore, right? So I would assume that, about 95% of your reporting needs are probably met by Stratacore, but not having that flexibility may be an issue for some. And then iLab, our main concern here is the API. So we use the API for reporting purposes, not to interface with another processing system or anything like that. But we've really had trouble getting any information about the API out of iLab over the past year or so. And based on our tech folks who have been working in the API, it's not a great API to use as well. And I know we have discussed that ad nauseum here in this meeting as well. In terms of the user interface, put a question mark here for this because we really didn't get to go in and play around with Nucor and Stratacore enough to make an informed decision on which was better. And this is a little bit of personal preference as well. Based on what we saw, all of the platforms looked pretty intuitive and pretty easy to use, but didn't feel comfortable making a ranking based on our limited experience with Stratacore and Nucor. For those of you that are interested, iLab, Stratacore, and Nucor are all hosted on the cloud, but Nucor can be hosted locally on premise as well. All right, so once we went through all of our demos and gained all of our information, we started putting that together to kind of perform an analysis. And some of the things that we came across during that analysis, I think may be helpful for this group to hear about, right? So you can learn from our experience. So some of the considerations that we had or that we discovered while we were doing this have to do with implementation and onboarding. So in our case, and again, a bit of a unique case because we have so many cores. If you're an institution that only has 15 or 20 cores, some of these things may not be as relevant. But we had potentially the cost of operating 2 or 3 systems at the same time, right? You can't snap your fingers and transition 100 cores over to a new system overnight. It takes time. And I think for us, we scheduled it out. It would take almost 3 years to do that. So we had to think about the potential costs of operating multiple systems at the same time. Some of the questions that we had to ask for that was how long does it take to develop, test, implement, and deploy the platform, right? What does the timeline look like? An important part of this too is how long does it take to get through our institutional IT security process? That's a very important process, and it increases with importance on a daily basis. But that process was going to take about 3 to 4 months for our institution, just to get to a point where we could say, okay, we want to move in this direction. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. The other thing that we thought about was onboarding the first wave of cores. So if we were to move to a new platform, once the platform is created, tested, and deployed, normally with that deployment, you have an onboarding of kind of the first tranche or first wave of cores. And I think generally that's maybe about 15 or 20 cores, depending on the size of your institution and what you want to do. But we had to think very carefully about that. And with one of the platforms, our first meeting, we said, how many cores could we onboard in the first year? And the answer was like 40 or 45. And we were like, that sounds like a lot, but that would be great for us, right? In subsequent meetings, we kind of pressed that question a little bit, and the answer came out, really don't recommend onboarding 40. It'd probably be more like 20 or 25 cores that we could onboard in the first year, in the first wave. So that made a big difference for us when we're talking about the costs, right? And how quickly we can transition from one system to another. So again, just questions that would be helpful to ask during this. Something that we had to think about from an institutional standpoint was what kind of support will be needed for this, right? What kind of support is going to be needed during the implementation phase while we onboard the cores and beyond that, right? Beyond that being onboarding new cores into the system or onboarding cores beyond that first wave, as well as what kind of day-to-day support is going to be needed for this. If we transition to a new system, we're going to have 100 cores that are using a new system that they've never used before. What is that support going to look like, and what are the requirements of us going to be to provide that support? We had to think about potential additional funding, right? Where are we going to get that funding? Our Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research currently subsidizes our iLab costs a little bit, and the remainder are passed on to the schools. You may have a similar model at your institution, or the entire cost may be covered centrally, or the entire cost may be passed on to the schools and departments and cores. And then, like I said, additional personnel effort. How many additional people or FTEs are we going to need to support this where it will be successful moving forward? Again, some of the things we thought about: onboarding support beyond implementation, the training and the ongoing support needed beyond that. And then one of the most important things we thought about was the potential disruption to cores and campus transitioning to a new platform. Obviously, the 45 cores that use the homegrown system, they're going to have to transition anyway, right? But for the 65 or so cores that utilize iLab, some of which have utilized iLab for 10 years now, and their customers, right, as well, what is the potential disruption to them across campus? And is this the right time to make that move? We also built out a financial model of various scenarios. I want to say, we had maybe 7 or 8 different scenarios that we looked at with going with a particular platform, and then this is how we onboard the cores, or this is the timing that we onboard. Like, we can onboard this many cores to begin with, and we want to take this many cores from the old system. And so there were a lot of different scenarios that we built out, and we looked at the financial implementation or implications of those over a 10-year period. And what we found, obviously, there were some estimates to be involved and things like that. But what we included, I would say first, what we included was cost of additional staff, right? We have to support this not only during implementation, but we have to be able to support this moving forward. Again, cost of potentially operating multiple systems at the same time. And then the cost to cores versus the cost to campus, right? Do we want to increase our institutional subsidy of this? Do we want to pass along more cost to the cores if we potentially have more cores to share that burden? And so these are all things that we wanted to think about and build into those financial models. So our conclusion was to stay with iLab. We decided to move forward with iLab. And we did receive the concession from iLab that we would be able to onboard 40 cores this year, which is pretty abnormal. I think when we first implemented iLab, I think we onboarded like 25 or 30, and normally we onboard about 13 to 15 cores per year. We worked with them to make sure that they had the resources and they could commit to onboarding 40 cores in 1 year. And again, this is just an example of kind of looking at this through the lens of UNC versus the lens of another institution. We had a hard deadline, right? We had a hard deadline of calendar year 2020, end of calendar year 2026 to make this happen. And that was one of the factors that played into this. If the current financial climate would have been different, we may have made a different decision. I'll be honest, if we had an unlimited pocketbook and we lived in a perfect world, we probably would have gone with Nucor. We were very excited about Nucor and the prospect of its customization, the prospect of, the sky is the limit in terms of what it can do. And we were very appreciative and grateful for Jeff and his team at Northwestern for spending a lot of time with us talking about Nucor and demoing it and providing us with information. They have a great team there, and they are very willing to have those conversations, and we're very appreciative of that. We also talked to several other institutions that utilize Nucor as well. However, we don't live in a perfect world. Over the past year or so, we certainly do not live in a perfect world. And we had to take in to consideration the current financial climate. And our financial models actually showed that it would require a little bit of short-term, a little bit, maybe a bit of initial short-term investment to realize a long-term savings in the future. And university leadership just wasn't comfortable given the current financial climate of making that short-term investment for potential long-term savings. iLab meets our current needs. We're not, Megan withstanding, we're not totally displeased with iLab, right? It meets our current needs. We're pretty happy with the system. Obviously, there are challenges. Obviously, there are things that we would like to see improved, but who knows what challenges and improvements a different system would need, right? I kept thinking to myself, if a perfect system existed out there, I think everybody would use it and we wouldn't even have a question of what to use, right? And most importantly, probably, we didn't want to avoid a major disruption for cores and customers on campus. Again, there's a lot of stress and anxiety on our cores and on our research community as it is, and we just thought this wasn't the time for a major disruption, not only to our core facilities, but to all of our core customers across campus as well. Again, I'll reiterate, please do your own research. The information that we shared today is based on demos and information that we received over the past couple months, and we could have misheard something or mistaken something. So if you have any questions about particular technical details or anything like that, encourage you to reach out to the vendors themselves and get the information firsthand from them, especially when talking about big decisions such as this, right? As potentially transitioning a system for core facilities. And again, I'll hark back to this as maybe the most important point. Like, think about how this system will work at your institution. Just because something fits at UNC doesn't mean that it's going to work well at another institution. So just view it through the lens of your institution, the needs of your core facility infrastructure at your institution. All right, I think I got through that as quickly as I could. I think I will stop sharing my screen. Again, contact information is here if anybody has any questions or would like to discuss outside this meeting. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to discuss any of this with you guys. And I think we'll turn it over to some dialogue. Hopefully, Megan and Michael have been, not hopefully, I know they have been providing excellent answers in the chat, but maybe we can turn it over to the audience if anybody has any insider information they want to share.
Wow, no questions. I really thought Hugh Gardner from Purdue was going to come up with one.
Uh-oh, Michael's calling out names.
Hello, my name is Kevin Carr. I work at Michigan State University for the genomics core. We're part of a larger group of cores. And we have just gone through a very similar process in the last year. Now, I'll tell you where we're starting is that there were one or two smaller cores on our campus that did utilize iLabs, but they were sort of islands. We had no campus-wide lab management system. And this became objectionable to people in the administration. So they decided that they needed a uniform lab management software. So a group was formed, but with the stakeholders from all the various cores to evaluate. And really, it was just two that we evaluated: iLabs and Stratacore. Now, realize we're starting from a point where, other than a couple of small users of iLabs, we had nothing in place. So we were starting with more or less a clean slate. And I'll tell you that the sentiment at the end of the evaluation period was sort of overwhelmingly in favor of Stratacore. And so that's what the university has decided to go with. And, so rollout's going to, starting to happen, this year. And again, a few cores at a time. And I think it's one thing is that one thing that I think really came in favor of Stratacore was that they had a much more a more extensive and documented API than iLabs. I think it's sort of notorious that iLabs doesn't really have an API, whereas Stratacore does, and actually they are rolling out a new more advanced API, which, and they're eating their own dog food. I mean, that's what they're using to develop their app further. They use the API, and any API that they build is available to users at the institutions. So that was something that really, I think, turned in favor, maybe not necessarily for, the folks in the administration, but the people in the cores who knew they were going to end up being the ones using it. So just want to tell you, what our experience was. Of course, that's different. Guys already had this tremendous investment in iLabs, whereas we didn't. So
I'm curious, Kevin, if you don't mind sharing, how many cores do you plan to transition over to StrataCore, and what does the schedule look like for that?
Okay, that I don't have because, like I say, I'm just in one particular core. And so we're probably talking um, somewhere about 20-ish or so, I think, 20, 30 cores, somewhere in that. Now, the core I work in the genomics core, which is probably really the largest and might be the most complex. So we aren't in the first batch of rollouts because big thing for us is we're going to have to integrate our laboratory workflow management. We use Clarity LIMS. And so we're going to have to integrate that with StrataCore. So that's going to be sort of a big thing. But so they're starting out with some of the first thing they're doing is working with the administrator is to get the instance tied into the financial system. They use Koali here at MSU. So that's the first thing they're doing. And then they will start rolling it out sort of with small numbers of cores, I think maybe 2, 3 cores at a time, and starting with some of the smaller ones that have sort of less complex needs.
Got it. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. And good luck with the implementation.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other thoughts?
I'll go if am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, new computer, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, I have one quick question for you, Kevin, about the API. Does the API from StrataCore work with calendared resources, as far as you know?
Sorry, Hugh, I can't answer that just because, I mean, really, it was like sort of over 6 months ago that we did this evaluation, and I haven't thought about it a lot since then.
Okay. Well, maybe I might reach out to you because I do have questions. I mean, basically, that's been our biggest ask since 2018 is being able to push and pull information from instruments. We have so many instruments on campus, right?
Right.
We have entire cores that are just based around instrumentation.
Right.
And I'm also curious how collaboration works in StrataCore. If you can have a better, more robust collaboration between cores, there is a collaboration feature in iLab that doesn't really do. I mean, you can't really hand things off, right? You basically are creating these charges, and so if somebody works in 10 cores, they get 10 separate invoices. So we're kind of curious about stuff like that.
Okay. Again, that's sort of above me, but I know that was actually one of the with the group and the people in charge. That was one of the points, is that this has got to be a system that can work across not only cores at Michigan State, but potentially partner institutions as well, which I think was why they might have been leaning towards iLabs.
Okay.
But
yeah, because I know when we went to the Midwest chapter meeting a couple years ago at Michigan, it's become the norm now in research that you'll have anywhere from 5 to 10 cores involved in a project, and handing it off, and being able to see that information. I mean, having a pipeline would be great.
Yes. And like I say, that was definitely one of the sort of critical specifications they had in evaluating the software. And again, I'm sorry, I can't give you much details, but I think we are all satisfied that StrataCore can handle that function, better than iLab. Well, if not as well as iLab, if not better, then certainly at least as well as iLabs.
Okay, that's pretty much what I wanted. I just kind of wanted to ask. Oh, and one last one. If anyone has any great workarounds or ideas on either using iLab or you see it in Stratacore and think the way they do is better, I think so many of us would be interested in a way to handle FNA or other variable rates and everything. So I'm kind of curious if anyone has any great ideas on that. But I'm gonna be quiet now.
Well, I know that in Stratacore, a client is associated with a group, and you can have different rates associated with different groups.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sweet. Thanks everybody. I just wanted to highlight in the chat if folks didn't see it, Jeff from Northwestern is here, and I will continue to sing his praises. And I didn't know he was on the call, or else I guess I would have said more great things about him. But I really can't say enough great things about him and his team. They're really great to work with from the new core perspective, and he says he's happy to entertain if anybody has any questions specifically about new core. Aaron, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And thanks for the presentation. I'm Aaron Larson, Seattle Children's Research Institute. We use iLab here, and a year or so ago, we put in the effort to really strongly consider Stratagore and demoed it and whatnot. And though we decided at the moment to stay with iLab, one worry that I had kind of in the background was the change from the user's perspective, like the core customer's perspective, from using a software that they're very familiar with in terms of equipment scheduling, requesting services, to moving to something that has the same purpose but functionally looks different. And I'm wondering if anyone here in the audience has had that experience when you've moved from one platform to another and how you engage with the users to kind of manage expectations before the move and during the move and afterwards.
Anybody got any insights on training users on campus to when you switch platforms?
I mean, it's never going to be fun, right? I mean, part of my role is I do all the training and training development too, and we can't even get the users who've been using iLab for 7 years so they can remember how to do things right. So, I mean, I guess I would look at it as you're never going to have all of your users feeling completely comfortable, but on the other hand, if they're not paying enough attention to know the current system and you switch them to a new system, you can probably quickly reestablish that same level of comfort or lack thereof. you know, QRCs, and having a robust support infrastructure. We have office hours normally where we have an hour every day that someone can drop in to ask questions. We've got a good TDX is our ticketing system. We have that, and we're going to start resuming doing occasional quarterly classes, but you just have to keep trying to drown them in resources to make the questions go away, or at least get down to a small amount.
Got it. Thanks. Lisa, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on it too. I was gonna say, we're about to go through the iLabs transition to iLabs, so I can tell you in a little while what happens. But I run a microscopy core facility at Duke, and so it's at the level of the core, and uh, we're just gonna teach people when they ask questions about how to use this new system that we have, and hope they like the features of the new system. Maybe. We're gonna have a lot of support from the administrative other parts of implementing the system. I think there's other people on the call that are helping with that level because there's gonna be lots of different levels of support. But I think if it's functionality is gonna work better for your organization, you just have to teach them. And you're right, like there's different levels. We've had something else for a long time, and we keep talking to people about how to put that reservation in the calendar properly all the time.
Are you guys rolling out iLab to the entire campus, or you just using it at your core?
Many cores. I don't know how many. If one of the people that's part of that, I think I saw might be on the call. I'm not sure the number of total number, but I think it's definitely approaching 20, maybe more, but I don't know what the long-term plan is. I'm a guinea pig gonna be the first one.
Good luck. All right. Any other thoughts? Christopher.
Hi everyone, Chris Gilpin at Purdue. I run an electron microscopy core, and I'm also part of the institutional support for iLab that we have here. One of the things that just revolutionized the way that my core works, so we have instruments for hire. People self-reserve, come and use it. We also do training and assisted use, that kind of thing, is having instrumentation interlocked. So iLab is very good at that. We have hardware interlocks, which control anything from a computer monitor all the way through to, the mains electricity onto a piece of equipment. It means we can control who uses it, and what time of day that they can use it. We also have software interlocks that iLab works with Sassafras to do, to be able to control individual executables at PC level. I really only have experience with iLab. I actually helped them develop all of that right at the very beginning. But do you know what interlock capabilities are provided by Nucore and Stratacore? I think I saw Stratacore have got some hardware, but I'm not hardware interlocks, but I'm not sure of anything else.
So I'm not familiar with that, so I'll need to ask the brain trust here what kind of interlock capabilities Nucore or Stratacore has.
All right. So for Nucore, you can control power relays, which you can have toggle on and off as people log in and log out. So you can plug, most cases, people just plug monitors into those to control access to the instruments, and they can start their reservation on their phone, right? So it doesn't need to be on when they sit down. You could plug a piece of equipment into a power relay. It's usually not a good idea, but
yes, indeed.
and we support a couple of different manufacturers, but if you have another one you wanted to use, it wouldn't be a big deal to code
And
that.
is that tied in with, for example, user training? Can you give people permission to switch that interlock on and off based on whether they're trained or not, or time of day or not?
It's part of the reservation. So when they log into the reservation, it turns it on. And then the reservations themselves are attached to equipment, and the equipment have access lists and schedule rules and all sorts of things that control who can make the reservations and when.
But only that's only hardware interlocks. So for example, we have PCs with pieces of software on that are either post-processing for a microscope, and we want to control those individually rather than just turning the whole monitor on and you get access to everything. So
yeah, we've not done any integrations like that.
Yeah, university-wide, we use Sassafras for controlling all of access to PCs. The student access is all controlled through Sassafras. And
yeah, no, we haven't done that. I mean, you could, we haven't.
Okay. No one with experience of Stratacore there and interlocks?
Looks like Matthew put a chat in there with some folks that do use Stratacore PPMS. So you may want to reach out to some of them, Chris, if you have any questions.
Okay.
Matthew.
Yeah, so I can comment on some of this. We're just early implementation phase of Stratacore PPMS. I've been an iLab user for about 8 years. I ran a flow cytometry core. I just stepped into a new role, kind of coordinating multiple core facilities on campus. And we put together a committee. Kevin Carr did a really, good job outlining kind of the process that we went through. I do believe that there are, a lot of these capabilities available with PPMS, with the interlocks and things like that are possible. But again, we're just in the first stages of this. But those other institutions like UC Davis, Cincinnati Children's Hospital, Salk. I think I just saw maybe David Leclerc from Chicago mentioned that they were using PPMS or had switched over recently. So there probably are, more opportunities to bring some of those people into these discussions for these specific questions, right? We're not the ones to answer right now, but I'm happy to talk about it in 6 months to a year once we've gone through the headache of implementing it. So if that's something that anybody wants to set up, we'd be happy to chat about it.
And certainly we have now almost 10 years experience of hardware and software interlocks with iLab. And as I've said, that's really something that I don't think I could live without in my facility. So any consideration, we like everyone unhappy with iLab and feature requests, etc. But to jump ship, if there was no equivalent interlock on the other side, then that would be really tough for me for sure.
Thanks, Chris. I know we've got 2 or 3 more minutes left if anybody has anything else. If not, I will think maybe turn it back over to Ken or Megan. I don't know who's closing us out.
Megan, would you like to take that? Or should we mention I believe the next session, which is going to be following the ABRF annual meeting. So we'll skip March, I think. And on April 7th, we'll have a conversation about how to calculate the big number. So I know that's very open-ended. So we'll share more information on the calendar. But one of your colleagues from the Medical College of Wisconsin will talk about how they're doing it, and then you can bring your ideas to that conversation as well. So thanks very much. Megan, anything else?
I think that's everything. Thank you all for coming. And if, as Ben said, if you have questions that you want to ask, shoot us an email.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We will share the recording of this session with everyone who registered, and that'll go out probably tomorrow. So thanks again.